Hi, I'm Jarrad Brown, Australian expat financial planner based here in Singapore. Thank you for tuning into my video today. What I'd like to discuss today is the digital nomad visa that Indonesia has recently announced. Now, they're still finalising the details, so it's not something that can be applied for just yet, as of the date of filming this video, but do stay tuned because if you are looking to work remotely, if you're looking to change residence or even leave Australia and become an expat and live in Indonesia, this will be a great video for you. So what we're going to cover in this one is exactly what's been announced and why, what it could mean for you, how tax could apply, and also what you should be thinking about, because just because it says something on the package doesn't simply mean that you should take that for granted and not consider the overall impact. So let's dive right in. Now, as we go into this post-COVID world, the majority of particularly developing countries that are heavily reliant on tourists are looking for ways to bring more tourists, but also more overseas money into their economy. And Indonesia is no different. So this is part of the plan. They've announced this digital nomad visa. It is part of their overall plan to bring back around 3.6 million tourists back into the country. Now, the critical requirement of the digital nomad visa is going to be that the source of the income must be from outside of Indonesia. This might mean that you're a YouTuber. It might mean that you're in a white-collar PAYG job with a multinational. As long as that employer or that source of income is outside of Indonesia, then you could be eligible to apply based on what we already know. Now, the critically important part of this visa is it will allow you to work in Indonesia, have rights to live there, and pay no tax in Indonesia for 5 years. So it's one of the most tax-effective long-term visas that allow non-Indonesian citizens to reside in the country. So on the surface, it sounds great. But as Australian expats, what do we need to think about? Let's dive into exactly what those considerations should be. The first one that you need to consider is your tax residency. What are the requirements to actually become a tax resident of Indonesia? Have you actually severed ties with the country that you're departing from? If you're leaving Australia, then you need to meet the ceasing residency requirements, which you need to be very careful about how you cut ties to Australia. Are you flying up to Bali every second week or so and spending the rest of your time in Australia? Have you really departed Australia with the intent of permanently leaving the country? This is one that you should speak to your accountant about. Consider getting a ruling from the Australian Tax Office if you're sort of operating in the grey and you're not quite certain, but certainly do your homework. Just by having a visa to reside in Bali and the knowledge that you're not paying tax in Bali doesn't mean that you've actually ceased being a tax resident in Australia. So you might be earning this great income in whatever your capacity is while you're working in Bali, paying no tax to the Indonesian tax authorities, but the Australian Tax Office is still going to come knocking if you are still an Australian tax resident. This naturally impacts tax rates that apply to rental income, other sources of income as well, so make sure that you do your homework here and consider what the overall plans are. Now, when it comes to your residency, the second thing we need to consider is, do you need to actually maintain a residency, whether as part of your job requirement, licensing, accreditation in your previous country of residence? For example, you may be a lawyer, you may be a real estate agent, you may hold some sort of license that requires you to maintain an address in Singapore or in Australia, wherever it may be. Now, this can impact a couple of things. Maybe it impacts your tax residency, so you certainly need to ask that question. But secondly, it could impact your cash flow. We all know that Singapore is not a cheap place to rent. If we have to rent both a place in Singapore and in our new country of residence being Indonesia, what does that look like from an overall cash flow perspective? We know that life in Indonesia may be cheaper than where we're currently residing, but if we have to duplicate some of these costs, what does the bottom line actually look like? So again, an important one to do your homework, review the cash flows and make sure you've got a bit of a plan for how this is all going to work. Now, the third thing to consider is how your investments and how the ownership structures of your investments will be taxed as an Indonesian tax resident. So here you need to consider the double tax agreement, either between Australia and Indonesia, or between your country of residence or citizenship, domicile, and Indonesia. So if you own investments through things like family trusts, companies, individual names, joint names, family structures, unlisted unit trusts, whatever it may be, again, do your homework here, work out exactly what those tax considerations are going to be, and make sure that it is still as effective a move as you expect it to be by moving to Indonesia. Now, the final consideration I just want to highlight in this video is to also consider whether you can continue to contribute to your investment plans or to your superannuation or to your retirement vehicles as an Indonesian tax resident. There are certainly plenty of investment platforms out there that will be available to Indonesian residents, but you may find that some, whether they be in Singapore or Australia or other countries, may no longer allow you to contribute because of the rules that they apply to residents of Indonesia. So again, plenty of homework here. It sounds like it's going to be an exciting opportunity for a lot of people, but certainly do your homework first before you book those tickets and make sure that it's going to make financial sense for you and your family. Now, if you have any questions at all on this one, please do drop me a note in the comments, reach out to me directly. More than happy to assist. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe and like, and I look forward to seeing you next time.